Or have we just found more sophisticated ways to manage our terror of the unknown? We have traded the four humors for complex biology, the priest's prayers for prescription pads, and the fear of witchcraft for the fear of malpractice suits. We have built gleaming hospitals of steel and glass, sterile temples to our own ingenuity. Yet the bell still tolls for us. We still die. We still suffer. We are still terrified of the pain we cannot see and the future we cannot control. The terror of birth has come to his door, and he has found that the abstract fear of witchcraft is a poor shield against the immediate, screaming need for a skilled hand. And so you rise. You turn from him without a word and move back into the single room of your home. Your hands know the ritual. It is a slow, deliberate dance against the panic that stands panting on your doorstep. You gather your bag, not the one for foraging, but the other one, the worn leather satchel that holds life and death. You had given her a tincture of willow bark, a remedy your own mother had sworn by, but it did nothing. The woman's wails followed you from her door, her grief curdling into accusation. The village whispers that your knowledge is an affront to God, a meddling with fates best left to Him. Your remedies may fail, their trust may turn to poison, but here in this small square of dirt, the cycle is pure. A seed, planted with care, will sprout. A flower, tended, will bloom. It is a truth more solid than any promise of paradise. You force a tincture of willow bark and borage between his lips, a prayer for the fever to break and for courage to take root. You murmur the old words, the ones that predate the church bells, calling on the spirits of the cool river stones and the deep earth. Then, making the sign of the cross, you pray to the new God and his saints, to Saint Roch, who knew the agonies of plague, to any holy martyr who will listen. You press a damp cloth to his forehead, but the heat beneath is a forge. But you also see a medicine, a secret whispered from your grandmother to your mother, and now to you. In a dose so small, it is almost homeopathic. A single dried, powdered leaf can soothe the fluttering, failing heart of an old man, buying him one more season, one more harvest. The line between a cure and a curse is a line only you can walk. Deeper in, you find what others call a weed, plantain, the waybread, growing stubbornly in the light-dappled paths. Sickness is not an invader from without, it is a rebellion from within. This elegant, all-encompassing theory is the bedrock of your age. It is logical, it is symmetrical, and it is almost entirely incorrect. But it is the only map you have. It dictates every action you must now take. For Thomas's hot and dry illness, you must apply a cold and wet cure. You speak to him in a low, calming voice, outlining the regimen. He must have cooling foods, cucumber, watery melon, the sharp green of sorrel. You know that fear, like a bad harvest, will return. Sickness will come again, and your reputation, your very safety, will always be as fragile as a human life. To live as you do is to accept this brutal cycle, to find your meaning not in being loved or even understood, but in being necessary. It is to accept that you are a tool for the village's survival, a grim implement to be picked up when a fever breaks or a bone snaps, and to be put down cautiously when the crisis is past. Has humanity truly evolved beyond this? He does not meet your eyes. He looks at the packed earth by your feet, at the dried herbs hanging from your eaves, anywhere but at the woman the village children run from. In the daylight, His wife crosses the path to avoid you. In the daylight, his friends spit when your shadow falls near them. But the sun is gone, and with it, their courage. In the dark, where the real fears live, the fear of a child born silent, the fear of a wife's last. Rattling breath, their flimsy superstitions burn away like straw. It resists, then gives way with a satisfying tear, a small victory in a life full of defeats. The priest's sermon on humility echoes in your mind, his words like stones. But here in the dirt, there is no sin in wanting to impose order. There is only the quiet logic of growth. You move along the row of calendula seedlings, their bright green heads a defiant splash of color against the dark earth. They push toward the sun with a force you understand in your bones. Last week, Goody Miller's boy was taken by the sweating sickness. He is limp, drenched, his skin slick with a terrifyingly profuse sweat that seems to pour from him, as if his very life is dissolving into water. You are the healer. The village looks to you as they look to the priest for an intercession, a miracle against the dark. You try everything in your arsenal, a lifetime of knowledge gleaned from whispers, from old women, from the Latin texts you can barely read but have memorized by shape and sound. The forest floor is not a random chaos of green. It is a living manuscript, and you, its devoted reader, know its every verse. You move with a quiet purpose that is part prayer, part hunt. Your eyes do not see clutter. They seek character, purpose, danger. There, by a moss-slicked stone, is a spray of elegant, bell-shaped flowers. A stranger sees only beauty. You see foxglove. You see a warning and a promise, a cardiac poison that can still a man's heart in an instant. The entire universe, from the turning of the great celestial spheres to the cycle of the seasons, is governed by a perfect, divine balance. So too is the body of a man. It is a vessel for four essential humors: blood, warm and moist like the spring air; phlegm, cold and wet like the winter rain; black bile, cold and dry like the autumn earth; and yellow bile, or choler, hot and dry like the heart of summer. Thomas is consumed by choler. The fire of summer rages in his blood. His body's natural harmony is dangerously skewed. Section 17. The Wilderness Within. As you walk home in the morning mist, the village is waking up. The air, sharp and cold, carries the first honest smells of the day, the earthy scent of baking bread mingling with the wood smoke rising from 100 hearths. Life is stirring, but for you, the night is only just ending. The whispers that follow you have not vanished, they have merely subsided, drowned out for a time by the ordinary sounds of survival. By the cry of a newborn you helped bring into a world that may not keep him. Thomas, the young farmer whose fields border the woods, his face, usually ruddy from the sun, is a pale, slick mask of terror in the moonlight. His chest heaves. He has run, and he has run from more than just the distance to your cottage. He has run from the judgment of his neighbors, from the priest's warnings, from the part of his own heart that believes the stories they tell about you. "It's Agnes," he gasps, the words tumbling out, broken. "Her time, it is weeks too soon. There is so much blood." Chapter 12. The Resilience of a Single Seed. Behind your cottage, the world shrinks to a small, forgiving patch of earth. Here, under the wide, indifferent sky, the judgment of the village falls away, muffled by the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of a fat bumblebee. You sink to your knees. The damp soil is cool against your skin, a welcome balm. It smells of life, of rot and renewal, a scent more honest than any incense burned at the altar. Your fingers, calloused and stained, find the root of a thistle and pull. Section 9. When the cure fails, the sweat comes in the summer, on a wind that smells of hay and dust. It is not the honest sweat of the harvest field. This is something new, a damp ghost that moves faster than gossip, a terrifying illness that begins with a shiver and ends, only hours later, in a shroud. The boy is laid before you on a simple cot, a small body already surrendering. At dawn, you walk into the woods, a woven basket pressing into the crook of your arm. The air is cold, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay, the scent of life feeding on itself. This is your true library, the only one you will ever know. The village priest has his heavy, chained Bible, its words locked in a language he barely commands. But your book is alive, its pages turned by the wind, its ink the color of chlorophyll and soil. He is burning from the inside out. He offers you the flask. Inside, his urine is dark, almost the color of strong ale, and clouded with sediment. You hold it to the weak light filtering through the waxed linen window, turning it slowly. The signs are as clear to you as the words in a psalter. This is not some demonic possession or a curse laid by an envious neighbor. This is a battle being fought within his own body. Your holistic view of a person as a tangle of body, spirit, and environment would be fractured into a dozen different specializations, each one looking at a piece of the puzzle, but none seeing the whole person you see now, cradled in the dawn. You stand at a historical crossroads, the quiet embodiment of a knowledge that was destined to be replaced, yet whose core principles, empathy, observation, and courage in the face of the unknown, remain the timeless, beating heart of healing. The knock is not a request. It is a surrender. 3 frantic thuds on your door, splintering the deep silence of the night. It is a sound that separates the sleeping from the dying, a drumbeat of pure panic against the thin wood that separates your world from theirs. You are already awake. Sleep is a luxury for those whose names are not whispered like a curse at the market cross. The embers in your hearth are gray ghosts, and the air is cold enough to steal the breath. There he is when you pull the door open. Who are you? When you are not what they call you, when the reflection they cast back at you is a monster. You look again into the pail of water. The face there is dark, unknowable, and for the first time, it feels like the only honest reflection you have left. Ask yourself, when the story others tell about you becomes a cage, do you break the bars and become the monster they imagine? Or do you simply fade away into the water, a nameless ripple in the dark? You are rooted in this place, in this complex web of obligation and mutual dependence, for better or for worse. It is both a safety net and a cage. Ask yourself, when your survival depends on the goodwill of a power that fundamentally distrusts you, is your knowledge a gift, or is it a curse waiting to be named? The heavy oak door groans open, letting in a slice of damp gray afternoon. It is Thomas, the farmer from the lower fields. His face is a mask of heat, flushed a dangerous shade of beetroot, and his breath comes in ragged, shallow bursts. He leans against the doorframe, his strength spent just in reaching you. You guide him to a stool, your hand on his arm. You press your fingers to his wrist, not to feel the steady beat of his heart, a concept as murky and unformed as pond water, but to feel the furnace-like heat radiating from his skin. The foxglove you used to steady a fluttering heart would have its active ingredients isolated, measured, and patented. Your remedies would be stripped of their soul and sold back to your descendants. At the same time, the compassionate, intuitive care you provided, the hand-holding, the soft words, the unwavering presence, would be given a new clinical name, the placebo effect, or a good bedside manner, a pleasant but non-essential part of treatment. The stonemason who knows the stress points of an arch, but cannot comprehend the will of God it's meant to honor. To know more than others is to see the true, horrifying scale of what is not yet known. It is to feel the weight of responsibility for that knowledge and for all the lives it fails to save. Ask yourself, in a world without answers, is the burden of the question asker the heaviest of all? The whispers follow you like a plague wind, a miasma of fear and blame. You have not changed. The herbs in your pouch are the same. Your knowledge, passed down from your mother, is the same, but the image of you has been shattered. The story has been rewritten, with you as the villain. This is the profound terror of it all. In a world woven together by name, duty, and reputation, to have your thread pulled is to feel the entire tapestry of your being unravel. It is an execution of the self, long before any pyre is lit. This system, a barter economy of skill and survival, creates a powerful, if fragile, social fabric. Your well-being is not an abstract number in a distant ledger. It is tangible, visible in the sack of flour on your table and the sturdiness of the roof over your head. But it also means you are tethered inescapably. Thomas's prosperity is your prosperity. His blight is your blight. If a drought withers his wheat, your payment vanishes. If a fox steals his hens, your basket remains empty. You cannot simply pack up your herbs and move to a town with better prospects. "It is God's mercy that guides my hand, Father," you murmur, lowering your eyes. You show him the sleeping Isolde, her brow cool at last. You defer, you praise, you perform the role of the humble, pious woman. You must. You are an essential part of this village's ecosystem, the one who eases pain when prayer is not enough. But you are also profoundly vulnerable. One failed cure, one baby that doesn't make it through the night, one jealous whisper from a neighbor is all it would take for his suspicion to curdle into a righteous, terrible condemnation. Was the superstition a vessel for the science, a story created to make the truth easier to remember? Or is the belief itself the most potent ingredient? It is the warmth slowly returning to a fevered brow, the setting of a broken bone that allows a man to work his fields again. It is the simple, stubborn fact that this community, in its own flawed, fearful, and fickle way, endures. Looking back from our vantage point, from a future you could never comprehend, we know the answer. Your craft would be both plundered and dismissed. The botanicals you gathered with such care would eventually be analyzed in sterile laboratories. The willow bark in your pain-dulling tea would be synthesized into a pill. They can even blame you. But you are left alone with the chilling, intimate knowledge of the body's mechanics and its mysterious, absolute failures. You saw the gears of life seize and grind to a halt. This is a profound loneliness, the isolation of the specialist who sees the world with a clarity that others cannot, and is haunted by all the things that still remain in shadow. Every expert, every pioneer feels this. The alchemist who understands the nature of mercury but cannot fathom the sun. The harvest failed, the wheat blighted by a rust-colored sickness. The reeve's wife bled out, her life slipping through your fingers despite nor herbs and whispered psalms. A wasting cough took 2 infants in the night, and the reflection you see in their eyes has changed. They no longer show a healer. They reflect a failure. They narrow, and in the dark corners of their gazes, a new word forms: witch. The same hands that once brought you a share of their bread now tighten when you pass. In return, he does not offer you silver. He offers you bread for the coming weeks, protein for your table, and the promise of a dry home to see you through the winter. It is an exchange of one life for another. You are woven into the village economy not by what you own, but by what you can do. Your worth is measured in fevers broken, in babies delivered, in the knowledge of which roots calm a cough and which leaves staunch a bleeding wound. Ask yourself, is this true value? It is a physical presence in your small cottage, as real as the stone hearth. Your remedies work a little too well. The village women seek you out before him when a child is feverish or a husband is wounded. This is your value, but it is also your greatest peril. You walk a tightrope over a fire. Are you a simple healer, a servant of the community? Or are you a hedge witch, a woman whose knowledge is too deep, too earthy to be godly? The line is not drawn by you, but for you, by men like him. We have chemistry, biology, and the cold comfort of double-blind studies. Yet, the deep human need for ritual around healing persists. Think of the doctor's white coat, the hushed solemnity of a hospital ward, the almost prayer-like way we swallow a pill, hoping. We have replaced the sacred willow with the sterile lab, but the core act of placing our faith in a remedy, in a process we don't fully understand, is a direct echo of your whispered chant over a bowl of crushed leaves. Ask yourself, when a child's life hangs by a thread in the dead of night, is it a book you want, or a woman who is not afraid of blood? You don't know the answer. You live in a world of immediate concerns, not long-term legacies. Your mind is already turning to the mother's afterbirth, the risk of fever, the bundle of yarrow you must prepare to stem her bleeding. Your legacy is not a name in a book. It is the child breathing softly in your arms. But that weight is dwarfed by the crushing, infinite mass of your ignorance. You live on a tiny, flickering island of knowing, in a vast, terrifying ocean of the unknown. This is the intellectual and emotional burden you carry, a penance for your skill. Every villager knows that life is fragile, a candle flame in a gale. But you are the one who has to stand at the bedside and watch the flame gutter and die. They can blame God's inscrutable will. They can whisper of the devil's work, of a crone's curse laid at a crossroads. Those eyes showed you a wise woman. They reflected a deep, weary gratitude when your poultice of comfrey and yarrow drew the fever from a screaming child. They reflected a desperate hope when you sat with a woman in the bloody straw of childbirth, whispering prayers to St. Margaret to see her through the ordeal. You were a fixture, as solid and necessary as the village well or the squat stone church. Your name was a kind of prayer on their lips, a charm against pain. Now the mirror of their faces has cracked. His voice is low, raspy from a life spent outdoors. He looks at you, his eyes holding a respect that is deeper than mere gratitude. The roof, he adds, glancing up at the ceiling where damp has stained the thatch a dark, ominous brown. When the rain stops, I will mend it. This is the currency of your world. You did not present him with an invoice. You battled the sickness that clung to him like a shroud. You, however, are a creature of the living, bleeding world. You speak of fevers, of broken bones, of the pains of childbirth, and the grip of colic. He offers comfort for the hereafter. You offer relief for the here and now. You are both healers, standing on opposite sides of a chasm. He heals with prayer and pronouncements. You heal with poultices and tinctures, with knowledge passed down from your mother and her mother before her, a chain of whispers stretching back into the mist. You feel the weight of his suspicion, a ritual to steady your own hand in the face of such overwhelming uncertainty, a fragile shield against the terrifying possibility that you might not be enough. This knowledge is a fragile inheritance, a chain of whispers linking you to a line of women whose names are lost to memory. It is unwritten, unprotected, and as vulnerable as a newborn in winter. It is both profound and profoundly wrong, a perfect medieval marriage of brilliant botanical insight and pure potential. Desperate superstition. We now isolate salicylic acid from willow bark and dismiss the rest as folklore. Or will it be replaced? You've heard the tales from travelers of the university-trained physicians in the great cities, men who speak Latin, a language you cannot read, who carry heavy books filled with the theories of long-dead Greeks. They dismiss your craft as nothing more than old wives' tales, a collection of superstitions and peasant ignorance. They talk of balancing the four humors with leeches and purging, of complex charts and foreign cures. Could their ink and parchment ever truly replace the wisdom of the fields, the feel of a pulse beneath your fingertips? But it was only the tide pulling back before the final crushing wave. The parish bell confirmed it at vespers. One short, high-pitched toll, a soul too small to make a deeper sound. Was there something else you could have done? A different herb you overlooked, left to wither on the stalk? A different saint you should have petitioned? A prayer said with more conviction, less doubt? The weight of your knowledge is immense. You know more about the humors, the properties of plants, and the seasons of sickness than anyone for miles. You lean over it, your back aching from a day of feigned purpose, and stare down. The face that looks back is a stranger, a dark ripple in the stillness, a distortion of cheekbone and shadow. It is no more you than a gargoyle is a saint. But then, your own face has never truly been yours to see. For a lifetime, your identity was a reflection held in the eyes of the village. It was a role they assigned, a story they told about you. And for years, it was a good story. He steps inside, stooping to clear the low doorframe, and with a grunt, heaves a heavy burlap sack onto your table. It lands with a soft, dense thud, releasing a puff of white dust that smells of the mill, of summer wheat, of life itself. Next to it, he places a small wicker basket. Inside, nestled in straw, are a dozen eggs, their shells ranging from pale cream to a rich, earthy brown. They are perfect, almost luminous in the gloom of your cottage. They are a treasure. The fever is broken, he says. It is not a question. God has blessed your womanly arts, he says. And the smile he offers is a thin, bloodless thing. It is a statement, not a compliment. A gentle warning, wrapped in the language of piety. He is a man of God, but a different God than the one who whispers to you in the rustle of leaves and the turning of the seasons. His God lives in the rigid, unyielding lines of Latin text, in a book bound in leather and locked away from your hands. He speaks of souls, of sin, of a salvation that is promised only after death. You know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones that the willow bark eases pain. But you were taught why. It is because the willow is a tree of water and sorrow, sacred to the moon, a vessel of feminine power that cools the body's inner fire. As you grind the bark, you begin a low chant, a rhythm of words passed down through whispers. Is the chant for the ailing man whose wife will soon be knocking at your door? Or is it for you? This craft, learned not from books, but from whispers, from watching your own mother's hands, from years of trial and error, a knowledge of herbs that calm a cough, of poultices that draw out infection, of words that soothe a troubled mind. Will it be passed on? Perhaps to a daughter, if the Lord grants you one who is clever and steady, or to a keen-eyed apprentice from the village, another link in this chain of whispers, taught to read the signs in a person's skin, the smell of their breath, the color of their humors. You see his mother's face, etched with a hope so fierce it was a kind of violence. You see the father, his hands clenched into useless fists, his gaze fixed on you, the one who was supposed to know. You gave the boy willow bark tea, a decoction to fight the fire in his blood. You placed a cool cloth on his brow and whispered a prayer to Saint Nicholas, the patron of children, your words desperate and thin. For a moment, you thought you saw a change, a lessening of the fever's grip. Section 11. Identity in a world without mirrors. You push the heavy plank door closed, the scrape of wood on the packed earth floor, a final, grating sound that shuts out the world. For a moment, there is only the scent of wood smoke, of damp wool, and the faint, sweet smell of the drying herbs hanging from the rafters. There are no mirrors here, not one piece of silvered glass to tell you who you are, only the pail of water fetched this morning from the well, its surface still and dark. The last time you saw him this close, his skin was the color of old parchment, slick with the sweat of a fever you fought back with poultices and whispered prayers for 3 long nights. Now, his face holds the ruddy, wind-scoured health of a man who lives by the rhythms of the sun and soil. He does not carry a purse. Coins are for merchants and taxmen, abstract tokens of a world beyond the village fields. His wealth is in his arms. The midday light shrinks from your doorway, as if afraid to touch the black wool of his cassock. Father Michael stands there, a pillar of shadow against the sun-bleached yard. He has come, he says, to see his old, to offer a prayer for the new mother and her babe. But his eyes, dark and sharp as a raven's, are on you. They sweep over the bundles of yarrow and willow bark hanging from the rafters, the clay pots of salves on the shelf, the faint, sweet bitter scent of your work that clings to the very air you breathe. A mortar and pestle, worn smooth by your mother's hands and her mother's before her. A small sharp knife for harvesting under the correct phase of the moon, and your own hands, stained with the ghosts of 1,000 remedies. This isn't a pharmacy as we would know it. It's an arsenal against a world where a simple scratch can be a death sentence. In your world, there is no clean line between medicine and magic. A prayer whispered over a simmering pot is as vital as the herbs within it. She will learn to fear the same darkness that lurks in the deep woods, the same fevers that steal children in the night, the same hunger that gnaws during a long winter. She will pray to the same saints, light the same candles for the same hopes. And one day, many seasons from now, she will be a woman grown, and she will need a healer of her own. Here, in the quiet of the dawn, a question surfaces, unbidden. What is the future of your knowledge? Night falls, but not for you. Sleep is a distant shore you cannot reach. You lie on your simple pallet of straw and wool, the air thick with the ghosts of the day's work. The sharp tang of yarrow, the bitter scent of feverfew, the earthy smell of crushed comfrey root. These are the scents of healing, the familiar shroud of your trade. But tonight, they smell only of failure. In the suffocating darkness of your small cottage, you replay the death of the child. The boy's breath was a ragged, shallow thing, a fraying rope about to snap. Ask yourself, in a world lit only by fire and faith, where do you place your blame when the darkness wins? A knock on your door is not the sharp rap of a bailiff, nor the hesitant tap of a beggar. It is solid, deliberate, a sound with weight behind it. You rise from the stool, the damp chill of the packed earth floor seeping through the thin leather of your shoes. Outside, the world is a smear of gray mist and lingering cold, but the sound at the door is one of promise, not of threat. You pull back the rough-hewn plank, and there stands Thomas. The placebo effect is a documented medical mystery, the mind's ability to heal the body through sheer belief. The web was a tangible symbol of hope, a story of protection the boy and his mother could believe in. It quieted the fear that constricted the heart and stole the will to live. Ask yourself, in an age where healing depended as much on the patient's spirit as the healer's skill, was the spiderweb medicine, or was it magic? Or was there ever a difference between the two? Light, thin as watered milk, struggles through the smoke hole and catches in the motes of dried leaves. A galaxy of remedies. Clay pots, cool to the touch, line the rough-hewn shelves. One holds powdered willow bark, a bitter dust for fevers that burn like a saint's ordeal. Another holds a foul-smelling poultice of mustard and dung, a vile but vital tool for drawing the poison from a festering wound. Your tools are not those of a craftsman, but of a survivor. In her, you see not just one fragile life, but the unending chain of which you are a part. A living rosary of mothers and daughters, stretching back into the mist of memory and forward into a future you cannot possibly imagine. You know this child. Even in this first moment, you know her. She will grow up in this same village, her world defined by the wooden palisade and the stone church. That the most potent medicine we can offer another human being is not a thing to be swallowed, but a moment of our time, our attention, our silent, unwavering companionship. He finishes his tea, places the cup back on the rough-hewn table, and leaves. You are left with the small, wooden bird in your palm, a fragile testament to the enduring weight of empathy. This is the dark side of the communal soul, its desperate need for a scapegoat. When the great, uncontrollable fears descend, plague, famine, a child's inexplicable death, the collective instinct is to find a face for the evil, to locate the source, and to purge it from their midst. It's a pattern that bloodies the pages of history, from these nascent witch hunts to the grand inquisitions to come. When we are afraid, we don't seek complex truths. We seek simple answers and clear enemies. But the shame and silence surrounding them can still be deafening. The feeling that one's own body has become a betrayer, the social pressure and quiet judgment, the exhausting struggle to be believed by medical professionals, these are the modern echoes of that woman's shame-faced visit. The need for a healer who listens, who validates, who offers not just a prescription but compassion is as critical now as it was then. Ask yourself, When the pain is invisible, is the truest remedy a cure or the simple, sacred act of being believed? To her, it is a powerful charm, a natural ward whose perfect creation could only be a sign of God's own design. It is a shield not just for the body, but for the soul. You are a physician of the flesh, yes, but you are also a psychologist of the spirit, treating the terror as much as the tissue. We scoff at such superstition from the safety of our sterile world. But what is the difference between her faith in a spider web and our faith in the power of a sugar pill? You return to your cottage at the edge of the village. The path is more worn from your own feet than from any visitors. To the others, this small, thatch-roofed building is a place of last resort, a place of both respect and suspicion. It sits apart, as you sit apart. Inside, the air is not air. It is a library of smells. You breathe in the story of the seasons. Dried yarrow and comfrey hang from the low rafters, their dusty, herbal scent a promise of knitting bone and staunching blood. But as you clean the newborn and wrap her in a worn linen cloth, a quiet, profound sense of purpose washes over you. It is the feeling of a harvest successfully brought in, of a prayer answered not by a distant God in heaven, but by the strength of your own two hands. You hold her up for the mother to see. The woman's face, slick with sweat and pale as bone, cracks into a weak, tearful smile. You look down at the tiny, wrinkled face of the newborn. Her eyes squeezed shut against this new, cold world. Ask yourself, what truly mends a spirit? Is it the potion that dulls the pain, or the steady hand that offers the cup? The greatest healers are not those who can conquer death, for no one can, but those who can sit with the dying, who can comfort the grieving, who can offer a moment of peace to the lonely. Your purpose is not just to cure, but to care. It is a truth as old as the earth itself. A quiet wisdom that a future world of gleaming steel and miraculous drugs will spend centuries trying to relearn. The children who once brought you wildflowers and shiny river stones now shy away, their small hands clutching at their mother's skirts. You are being redefined, your label peeled off and replaced. Yesterday, you were a community asset. Today, you are a community threat. Your knowledge of roots and leaves, of poultices and tinctures, once a source of respect and a little bit of awe, is now being reframed as evidence against you. The same hands that brew a tea to soothe a cough, can they now reason, surely brew one to cause a blight? You become a confessor, not for the soul, but for the body. In this small sanctuary, she can speak of the blood and the failure, the hope that sours into despair month after weary month. You treat her not as a sinner, but as a person in pain. The herbal remedy you eventually give her, a bitter tonic of raspberry leaf and feverfew, is merely a vessel. The true medicine you offer is empathy. How much has really changed? We have given these unseen ailments new names, charted them in our grand medical texts: endometriosis, PCOS, infertility. From a small wooden box, you carefully lift a perfect spiderweb, harvested from the barn rafters at dawn and preserved on a piece of parchment. It is a miracle of natural geometry, intricate, shimmering, and impossibly strong. With the reverence of a priest handling a holy relic, you lay the web across the wound. It clings to the edges of the skin, a silvery, delicate net. A long, shuddering sigh escapes the mother's lips. It is done. The door has been sealed. The spiderweb is more than a simple covering. The technology has changed. The words are different, But the fundamental human drama has not. It is still one person, armed with specialized knowledge, fighting with everything they have to hold back the darkness for another. A sudden shift, a new wave of pain from Isolde, but this one feels different. It is a forward motion, a surrender. The hard knot of the shoulder is gone. Your hands now feel the smooth, round promise of a head. The fight is not over, but the war is won. Chapter 16. A future written in smoke. The cry is thin, but it is a cry. It cuts through the smoky air of the small cottage, a sound more potent than any church bell, a testament against the silence. Just as the sun begins to bleed its first pale colors across the horizon, the farmer's child is born. A girl, small but whole, healthy. You are exhausted, a weariness that sinks deep into your bones, your hands aching from the work, your back a knot of fire. He has come for a moment of shared, quiet humanity, to sit with the one person in this village who saw his deepest grief and did not turn away. In this small, simple visit, you are reminded of a deeper truth about your role. You are not just a purveyor of remedies for the body. You are a keeper of stories, a witness to suffering, a pillar of support in a world built on the knife's edge of survival. Godwin does not need you to be infallible. He only needs you to be present. And you, the healer who failed, are the most logical villain. The trust you spent a decade building, one poultice at a time, one successful birth after another, is dissolving in a matter of hours. Your social position was never built on stone. It was a precarious hut of sticks, built on a foundation of successful outcomes. With one high-profile failure, a child of a respected family, the entire structure has been kicked over. You feel the change like a shift in the season, a sudden chill that has nothing to do with the air. Her suffering is a cruel doubling. First, the relentless physical agony that steals her breath and bends her spine. Second, the immense crushing weight of social disgrace. You see the brand of shame on her brow, invisible but heavier than any iron. Yet here, in your quiet cottage, surrounded by the scent of drying herbs and wood smoke, the rules of the world outside are suspended. You do not ask about sin. You do not speak of penance or God's plan. You simply motion for her to sit on the low stool by the fire's embers, and you listen. You crush the brittle leaves in your palm, the green, earthy scent a small anchor of life in this room of fear. You press the rough poultice into the weeping gash, and slowly, miraculously, the steady ooze of red begins to thicken and slow. But the work is not done. The flesh may be mending, but the spirit is still exposed. The mother watches your every move, her breath held tight in her chest. For the final dressing, you produce your most valuable tool. Ask yourself, when the only tools you have are your hands and your will, is what you are doing medicine, or is it a form of prayer made real? We see this moment and think of primitive medicine, of brutal, unhygienic conditions. And they are here. The risk of fever, of bleeding, of death hangs in the smoky air. But look closer. See the focused intensity, the immense weight of a community's hope and future placed on one person's shoulders. This is the ancestor of every modern surgeon in a sterile operating theater, every paramedic in a chaotic emergency. As you reach the door, he scrambles to open it, holding it wide. You step across the threshold, from the cold darkness, into a small, suffocating room, thick with the scent of sweat, fear, and blood. You are no longer the scapegoat. You are not the failure or the outcast. You are needed. And in this world, that is the only identity that truly matters. If the saints are kind, you reply, your gaze drifting to the small pouch of St. John's wort hanging from a roof beam, a ward against demons and melancholy alike. He asks about your garden. You tell him the dill is growing strong, that the bees have favored the lavender. He nods, sipping the tea. He has not come for a cure. He has not come for a poultice or a prayer. He has come for comfort. And finally, the poison that gives the fear its shape. Father Michael always said her cures were too close to the old ways, too close to witchcraft. The child's death needs a narrative. It is too great a terror to be random, a simple failing of a small, fragile body. God would not be so cruel without reason. The community, in its collective, frantic grief, cannot accept the void. They cannot accept that life is a flickering candle in a constant, unthinking wind. So they seek a hand that snuffed it out. She speaks of barrenness, a hollowness that echoes the scorn in her husband's voice. In your world, the inner workings of the body are a place of profound and terrifying mystery, a map of a person's moral standing. A woman's womb is a field to be plowed and seeded for God's glory and her husband's legacy. If the field yields no crop, it is not the soil that is deemed faulty, but the soul that tends it. Infertility is not a medical condition. It is a divine verdict, but public testament to some hidden sin. You take the wineskin, the sour, cheap vintage reserved not for celebration but for scouring, and pour it directly into the wound. The boy shrieks, a raw and honest sound, and the mother flinches as if struck. But you hold the leg firm. You know that wine cleanses corruption. It burns, yes, but it burns away the rot that can so quickly turn a simple injury into a death sentence. Next, from a leather pouch, you take the dried leaves of yarrow, Achillea millefolium. The soldier's woundwort, they call it, for its power to stanch the flow of blood. You speak of the turning of the seasons, of the strength of the oak, of things that endure. They are just words, but they are the tools you use to calm the mind while your hands do their terrible, necessary work. With a pressure learned from 1,000 heartbeats of panic, you begin to push, to gently, firmly persuade the life within to turn. It is a blind negotiation with flesh and bone. A dog barks, a sharp, lonely sound. Up ahead, a single square of light glows weakly from the window of Thomas's cottage. A sound drifts from it, not a word, but a long, keening cry of pain that seems to pull the whole night tight around it. Thomas freezes, his head whipping toward the sound. The fear on his face deepens into something primal. He turns to you, and this time, he meets your eyes. The suspicion is gone. There is only a terrifying, pleading hope. Your shared vulnerability is a stronger bond than your shared suspicion. He does not speak of the stillborn son you helped him bury a decade before that, nor of the whispers in the village that followed, the cruel talk of cursed wombs and God's displeasure, talk you helped to quiet. He just sits on the stool by your hearth, which holds only cold ashes. You pour 2 cups of weak chamomile tea, brewed with water from your own well. The silence between you is not empty. It is a vessel holding everything that cannot be said. The harvest will be early this year, he says, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. You see it in the way a neighbor, whose son you cured of a fever last autumn, now cannot meet your eye, his gaze fixed on some distant, invisible stain in the mud. The whispers started the morning after the little boy died, coiling through the village lanes like smoke from a damp fire, acrid and clinging. Her herbs didn't work. A simple statement of fact, but layered with something else. Then, the next layer. Did you see the look in her eye as she worked? She will not meet your eyes. Her gaze is fixed on the ground, as if searching for a place to bury the words she cannot bring herself to speak. She will not name her husband, referring to him only as he. She will not name her ailment, but you understand the shape of it from the shadows under her eyes and the tremor in her hands. She speaks in whispers of woman's troubles, a pain deep within, a gnawing serpent coiled in her womb that tightens its grip with every moon. She sees not torn flesh and blood, but a spiritual breach, a weakness in the mortal wall that protects him from the things that lurk in shadows and sour the milk. Her fear is a contagion, more dangerous than any fever. You push past her terror, your calm a strange and heavy blanket in the small room. You don't have words for germs or bacteria, but you have observation. You have the wisdom of generations, passed down in hushed tones over winter fires. But you are not a miracle worker. You are simply the one who does not look away when everyone else is closing their eyes to pray. Your authority comes not from a distant God in a gilded heaven, but from the grim, earthbound necessity of pulling a new life into the world, even if it means reaching into the very jaws of death to do it. Your hands, slick with herbal oil and a mother's sweat, are the first and most essential medical instrument. You murmur to Isolde, your voice low and steady, a counter-rhythm to the priest's prayers. Ask yourself, if your world was measured only by the next harvest and the next healthy birth, would you let piety starve you? Or would you accept bread from a sinner's hand? Your existence is a pendulum, swinging between their reverence and their suspicion. Today, a witch. Tonight, a savior. Tomorrow, if the child is born wrong or the mother bleeds too much, you will be a murderer. The cycle of life, death, fear, and need turns and turns. You are its axis. You feel the weight of every rotation. You are almost there. He has not come to your door since. He shuffles past you, his feet wrapped in worn leather, and says nothing. He isn't sick. In his gnarled, trembling hand, he holds out a small bird, carved from a piece of pale birchwood. The wings are a little uneven, the beak not quite sharp, but you see the hours of patient work in it. A gift for a debt that can never be repaid. As Section 10, From Healer to Scapegoat. The silence of your small cottage is a lie. Beyond the wattle and daub of your walls, a new sound is growing. It's not the morning bell from the church tower or the lowing of cattle being led to pasture. It is the whisper. You hear it when you draw water from the well, a sudden hush in the chatter of the other women. Dusk bleeds through the cracks in your cottage walls, turning the air the color of a fading bruise. You are grinding dried mugwort, the pestil's rhythm, a slow, earthy heartbeat in the quiet. A knock comes, not a sharp rap of authority, but a hesitant tap, soft as a moth's wing against the wood. You open the door to a silhouette, a woman, her face lost in the deep folds of a woolen cloak, slips inside without invitation, bringing a gust of cold, damp air with her. She moves like a phantom, her feet silent on the packed earth floor. His mother kneels beside him, her prayers a frantic, whispered litany to saints whose names she can barely remember, her knuckles white as she clutches a small wooden cross. His leg is the source of the chaos. A fall from the old oak has left a gush on his shin, a deep and ugly wound, gaping like a mouth. To his mother, it is a mouth, a hell mouth, an open door through which the devil, ever watchful, might crawl into her son's very soul. You must appear to be a vessel of ancient wisdom, a conduit for nature's deepest secrets, because in this room, belief is half the cure. If they see you falter, if they smell your own fear under the scent of the chamomile you've strewn, then terror will kill Isolde faster than the birth ever could. You are the final line of defense in an age where a chill can become a death rattle by morning, where a broken bone is a lifelong misery, and where the water from the wrong well can empty a house in a week. They have cast you out, built a wall of suspicion around your life, yet it is their own desperate hands that tear it down, stone by stone, in their darkest hours. This reveals the unwritten law of survival, a truth more fundamental than any commandment preached from the pulpit. We may build our lives on scaffolds of belief, gossip, and fear, but a single gust of real-world terror can send it all crashing down. Underneath it all, we are pragmatic animals. We will turn to whomever and whatever offers us the best chance of seeing the sun rise again. A soft, hesitant scratching comes at your door, a sound like a mouse trapped in the wall. But this is not the sound of a desperate patient clutching a feverish child or a festering wound. This is a sound you know. You open the door to the weak afternoon light, and there he is, Godwin. The years have carved him down to his essential parts: bone, memory, and a quiet ache that lives behind his eyes. It has been 5 winters since you sat with his Elspeth, holding her hand as the rattling in her chest finally fell silent. It is the chilling realization that to those you serve, you are either a saint or a curse, with no ground in between. You pull a final handful of yarrow for fevers and turn back toward the sounds of the waking village, the scent of wood smoke, a promise of the different, more treacherous world that awaits you there. Chapter 4. A wound, a prayer, and a spiderweb. The scream is a ragged tear in the fabric of the afternoon. It's not the sharp cry of surprise, but the lingering, breathless wail of terror realized. You find them in the small, smoky cot, the air thick with the smell of panic and damp earth. A boy, no older than 9 winters, lies on a pallet of packed straw, his face pale as milk. His world is one of faith. Yours is one of consequence. This is the core of your existence, not a science, but a desperate art form practiced on the edge of a knife. Your knowledge is a patchwork quilt, pieced together from 3 precious threads, the herbal remedies your own mother taught you, whispered over a simmering pot, the sharp-eyed observation of what works and what simply sends a soul to God faster, and the delicate, exhausting performance of absolute confidence. Thomas leads, a frantic shadow lighting the way with a guttering torch. The path is a treacherous ribbon of mud and stone. The cottages are dark, their windows like vacant eyes. Behind them, the village sleeps, or pretends to. Perhaps they hear your footsteps. Perhaps they lie awake, clutching their crosses, praying for Agnes while condemning the one person who can help her. It is a profound and bitter irony. Or is it in the silent, stubborn miracle of a seed you planted with your own 2 hands? This act of cultivation is not an escape. It is a gathering of strength, a quiet insistence on life in the face of despair. It is an act of defiance, a prayer whispered not to the heavens, but to the earth. A reminder, that even when everything else has been burned away, something new can still push its way toward the light. Their eyes are filled with a new and terrible emotion. The respect they held for you, a currency more valuable than silver, is now mingled with a cold, rising fear. When you succeed, your power comes from God and benevolent nature. When you fail, they begin to wonder if it comes from somewhere else entirely. Your hands, which just moments ago were seen as instruments of grace, now seem tainted. Ask yourself, when your only shield is belief, what happens when a crack appears? The healer's great burden is not just the loss, but the suspicion that follows. This is the foundation of your power, a quiet authority that has nothing to do with land or title. It is a wisdom that connects you to something primal, something the villagers both depend on and deeply mistrust. They will seek you out in the hush of sickness, but their whispers in the market square can turn gratitude to suspicion as quickly as the weather turns. Ask yourself, when your only power is a secret, a knowledge whispered from the earth itself, are you a healer, or are you a witch waiting for the kindling to be gathered? We do the same today, do we not? We cling to wellness fads, to restrictive diets, to pop psychology frameworks that promise to distill the unexplainable messiness of being human into a simple, elegant chart. The four humors may be gone, but our hunger for a map to our own complex inner workings is as fierce as ever. Ask yourself, when you are lost in the wilderness of your own body or mind, is it the accuracy of the map that saves you, or the simple courage you gain from believing it leads somewhere? You know this not from any book. Books are for men like the priest, filled with saints and scripture, but from the desperate geography of his old swollen belly, a living map your hands have learned to read over 2 decades of such nights. You can feel it now, the small, unyielding shape of a shoulder where a head should be, a stubborn knot in the tapestry of life. The priest's Latin drones on about original sin and heavenly deliverance, a useless comfort against the biological reality of this moment. He speaks of the soul. You are focused on leverage and anatomy. We speak of holistic care and mind-body connection as if they are radical new discoveries, when in truth, we are just remembering what you always knew. They feared the darkness in the woods and the pestilence on the wind, the ill omens in the sky and the demons in the fog. But the true wilderness, the one that never changes, was the one inside the human heart. Your work was to bring a single, flickering candle into that night. The fear of the forest has faded, but the wilderness within remains, and we are all still searching for that light. Thomas flinches, just for a second, as you emerge from the shadows of your home. For that instant, you are everything they say you are. The crone from the woods, the woman who knows too much, the scapegoat for their soured milk and sick livestock. But then you shift the bag on your shoulder, and the scent of chamomile and clean linen cuts through the night's chill. In that moment, the vision breaks. You are no longer the witch. You are the healer. Your walk through the village is a silent procession. This small kingdom responds to your care in a way the human world does not. In tending to these plants, you are tending to the last embers of your own spirit. You are reconnecting with a power that feels older than saints and scriptures, not for the village, but for yourself. Ask yourself, when the world offers only chaos and condemnation, where do you find your truth? Is it in the words of others, shouted from a pulpit or whispered in a marketplace? Your power, your very place in this village, is built on a foundation of successes, the fevered child who recovered, the wound that closed without putrefaction, the difficult birth that ended in a healthy cry. But your reputation is haunted by the specter of these failures. And in this moment, all the confidence you project, all the rituals you perform, crumble into dust. You are left with the cold, hard fact of your own impotence. The mother's wail subsides. Replaced by a shuddering silence, the villagers at the door, who had watched with hope, now watch you. This is a being far older than the stones of the village church, and you know its bark, boiled down, creates an astringent wash that can calm a raw throat and cleanse infected skin. This knowledge lives not in your head, but in your hands, your eyes, the very marrow of your bones. It is an intimacy with the seasons, a fluency in the language of soil and sun and shade. You know the damp corners where the mushrooms hide after a rain, and which ones promise a savory meal versus a fevered death. You are practicing medicine with absolute conviction, using the very best knowledge available to you. You are also, by the standards of a future you cannot imagine, treating the symptom and misunderstanding the cause so completely, it is almost a form of prayer. Before we judge this world too harshly, consider the profound comfort of its certainty. It offers a framework for the chaos of existence, a sense of control in a life where death is a constant, arbitrary neighbor. It provides a reason, a logic, a path forward when the body fails. Her mother, face etched with the ghosts of her own childbirths, grips one of Isolde's hands, a living anchor in a sea of pain. In the corner, hunched against the daub wall where the shadows are deepest, the village priest mutters prayers in Latin, his voice a low, rhythmic drone. But their eyes, even his, are all on you. You are the village healer, the woman they seek when God's mercy seems too far away or too slow in coming. This is your domain, the raw. Bloody threshold between one world and the next. The baby is turned wrong. The healer's burden has not disappeared. It has been distributed amongst 1,000 specialists, each carrying a small, polished piece of the weight you carried alone. Your medicine was a desperate, hopeful blend of what worked, what was believed to work, and the sheer, undeniable force of your own compassionate presence. It was a practice built on the recognition that a person is not a machine to be fixed, but a story to be witnessed, a soul to be sat with in the dark. We are slowly, hesitantly, finding our way back to this ancient wisdom. You take the bundles of raspberry leaf to ease the womb, the yarrow to staunch the bleeding. You take your sharpest knife, boiled clean just yesterday, and wrap it in the best linen you own, a piece saved from your own mother's dowry, soft as a prayer. You take a small jar of honey for the infant's first taste of the world, a charm of polished riverstone, and your courage. You gather it all. When you step back out into the night, the air is sharp with the coming frost. This garden is your true sanctuary, more than a larder for winter, more than a source of poultices and teas. It is a testament. It is the place where your wisdom, dismissed and feared by others, bears visible, undeniable fruit. You can't stop the flux in a dying man's gut, nor can you mend the web of fear and superstition that traps your neighbors. But you can nurture this single stem. You can protect it from slugs. You can give it water and watch it thrive. The body, that familiar map of sinew and bone you know so well, is being consumed by a fire you cannot quench. His mother kneels in the corner, her own prayers a frantic, rhythmic hum. But the boy's breaths become shallow, like a bird's. He dies in your arms. The heat leaves him all at once, replaced by a sudden, profound cold. The mother's hum shatters into a wail that seems to crack the very walls of the small hut. This is the abyss you always work beside, the absolute limit of your knowledge. You gather its broad leaves, knowing they will be crushed into a poultice to draw a splinter from your husband's hand, or to soothe the angry red welt of a bee sting on your child's cheek. It is a humble magic, but a potent one. You pass a gnarled ancient oak, its bark a cracked and wrinkled skin. You nod to it, a small act of reverence. He must rest in a dim, cool room, away from the agitating sun. You turn to your herbs, preparing a bitter draught of chicory to douse the internal flames. You consider bloodletting, a small, careful incision to release the excess heat, to vent the pressure building in his system. But you are wary of the town's barber surgeon, whose work is often more butchery than healing, his basin perpetually stained with the blood of the desperate. For now, the herbs and the cooling will have to suffice. Your treatment is a perfect, faithful expression of a deeply flawed system. Chapter 1. The First Cry in the Dark. The air is thick enough to drink, a soupy mix of wood smoke, old sweat, and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. You are kneeling on the damp earth floor of a wattle-and-daub hut, your back a column of fire, your knees numb stones pressed into the dirt. Before you, a young woman named Isolde thrashes on a straw pallet, her face a pale moon in the single, flickering tallow light.